SEGA.
Hello YouTube, this is Michael B. the Game Genie, and in my final installment in SEGA Month, this is Video Game Nostalgia.
Goodbye.
Okay guys, so the first thing I want to do is say thank you so much to the people who made video responses to the last episode of Video Game Nostalgia. They were Coach Newman 17, Weekend Game Guy 1, Nessum Simpson, X GameStorm X Adi, and X GameStorm X Gary. So guys, this week's question is, what was the first system that you remember playing from Sega? For me, I mean, this is a pretty easy answer to give, because I grew up a Nintendo fanboy, and you would have seen from a couple of my videos, I never actually got into video gaming until late in the lifespan. For me, I picked up my NES around 87, 88, and I fell absolutely in love with it. But more so, I fell in love with video games. So I've had the NES for about a year, year and a half, and I started seeing commercials for this brand new system coming out. Let me show you that commercial right now.
Genesis does
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does
16-bit sports action.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis does
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free.
Genesis does.
What Nintendo don't?
Buy a 16-bit Genesis system between now and October 31st and get an extra game.
So obviously, I'm easily suggestible, and I thought, oh my god, this thing is going to absolutely blow Nintendo out of the water. I mean, the look of it was so cool, it was so adult, the advertising was incredible. The graphics looked like it was truly next generation. This looked closer to what I remember seeing in the arcades, and I just said, wow, I absolutely want to get it. So the seed was planted in my mind. I'm going to forward a little later. That Christmas, I was looking through the Sears wish book, as I always did when I was developing my Christmas list, and I come across an advertisement for the Sega Genesis. It was the first time I actually seen it advertised and available here in Newfoundland. So I took a look at it, and there was a couple games available, and I asked my mom, I said, Mom, for Christmas, can I get a Sega Genesis? And she said, no, Michael, we've already spent so much money on the Nintendo, you have so many games, why can't you just play that? You don't need extra systems. So she was totally against it. Christmas came and went, I never got my Sega Genesis. Now, I'm not trying to say my parents were bad people, because, you know, they were awesome. I think that Christmas I ended up getting like 3 or 4 more Nintendo games. Just didn't get the Sega Genesis, and not a big deal. But my interest in the Sega Genesis never faded away. I remember looking through an IGN magazine, and I see my first full advert in like a video game magazine for the Sega Genesis. So a little bit later that year, we actually moved. I was living in a place called Mount Pearl. We actually moved to a new town just outside called Paradise. And when we moved there, I didn't have a whole lot of friends at first, so my parents used to always, you know, be really good to me. They'd give me like $20 allowance on the weekend to go do something, like rent movies or video games or something. So I come across this small convenience store called the Red Circle, and actually they rented movies and video games. And when I went inside, I found out they actually rented systems. And sure enough, they rented the Sega Genesis. So I went up to the counter and I said, how much? And they said, for the full weekend, $14.99 to rent your Sega Genesis. And then also I had $5 left over, which let me rent 2 games. So the first time and the first Sega system I ever played was the Genesis that I rented from Red Circle. And that was the Sega Genesis Model 1. I mean, it was such a difference from the Nintendo I was used to. I mean, you could plug in your own stereo headphones, and there was a separate volume level. It was top loading, and just the visual presentation made the system look incredible. So of course, I got to rent a couple games out for it. The first game I ever rented, obviously, was the mascot game. That was Sonic the Hedgehog. Man, I have so many fond memories of playing the original Sonic the Hedgehog. It was just such a beautiful game. I mean, what they talked about with the whole blast processing and the speed, I didn't really see it, but the game obviously was really fast. And, I mean, it was so different. There was no blurring like I was used to with the Nintendo when there was multiple enemies on the screen. The bosses, the original Dr. Robotnik at the end of each Stage 3 was incredible. I absolutely loved Sonic the Hedgehog. And the second game I ever rented was a game a lot of people put down and say it's not a great game, but I absolutely loved it, and I'm very happy that I eventually ended up picking up, and that is Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Of course, I got this game, and I'm so interested in the SEGA System in the first place, I guess, going back to the commercial, because of Michael Jackson. I grew up a huge Michael Jackson fan. I mean, one of my favorite songs and videos still to this day is Thriller. I loved everything else he did too, so I was excited to pick up Moonwalker. While not an incredible game, and I never knew what I was doing when I played it, I still enjoyed it. So after my first weekend, I brought it back and I said, wow, that thing is incredible. I just had so much fun. So I went back the very next weekend, and of course, I rented Moonwalker again, but I also rented a new game, and that was Streets of Rage, and this absolutely blew me away. I mean, I remember I had a small 13-inch TV up in my room, and just putting in Streets of Rage, watching the opening sequence, it was incredible, and it was just so much fun to play. Although, I've never finished Streets of Rage still to this day. So guys, like I said, the first SEGA system that I remember using was the Sega Genesis. So what I want to do now is I want to hear your stories. What was the first SEGA system that you remember playing, or your earliest SEGA memories? Anyways, this is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll talk to you next time. Yeah, keep laughing, Streets of Rage. I will finish you one day. Mark my words.